Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and listening to the Stop the Nonsense show with me, Gil Melrose. Today, we're going to be talking about tariffs. Again, this is part two or part deux. I spoke about tariffs a couple months ago in February before they went into effect. Back then, it was just a conversation. And here we are this week. They did go into effect, and you can't go a day without hearing about tariffs, right? So it seems like the right thing to do. We have to talk some more about it. It's such a hot topic, and I have so much more to talk about tariffs. It is affecting everybody's lives, not just in America, not just people around us. It's around the world. Everybody around the world is talking about it. So it felt like the right thing to do is talk some more about it. So here we go. Part two. Let's dive right in. First of all, the first thing I'm thinking about is like, ooh, look at my 401k, right? Look at the stock market. If you didn't know, if you weren't following the stock market, it has crashed or lost trillions, if you will. It's down to 38,000 points. The Dow Jones is 38,000 points. When Biden left office, just to give you some perspective, it was at 44,000 points. So we lost almost 6,000 points. It's 38 point something. So 5,000 some change points, which equates to trillions of dollars. By the way, before I continue, this is not a political conversation. I do want to emphasize that I try to avoid politics. So don't be thinking I'm taking a side one way or another. I'm just speaking my mind about what's happening, right? So just want to get that out of the way and clarified. If there is a Freudian slip somewhere here, I apologize. It is unintentional. Anyway, so the stock markets are down now, and we're wondering what's going to happen, right? Where is this? Is tariffs good or bad? Is tariffs horrible? So far, I think there's a mixed bag there, right? Some people might say, well, no, just give it time. Let it play out. Some people are like, no, this is the worst idea ever. Having said that, I personally think tariffs are not bad. They're not horrible if done properly. In my last segment, I talked about, labor rates and the things that we do and we can do to make things better. And there's got to be a balance. So in small doses, I think tariffs are good. They're not bad if done properly. We have to help the country, yes, to build things, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that's something that we don't talk about so much. In small doses, everything in life, right? Anything in life in small doses is not bad. In fact, some things are healthy. Even alcohol in small doses, they say, is healthy, right? So in small doses, slowly over time. We can't just stop our TVs coming from China. We can't stop our whatever, refrigerator, whatever we buy from China, Japan, or Europe for that matter. We can't start making toasters tomorrow. We can't. It doesn't work that way, right? We can't start making these auto parts that we bring from Canada and Mexico ASAP tomorrow. There's going to be a lag time. And this is, by the way, I'm talking American cars with parts coming from Mexico. But how about the stuff that we just don't make here, right? We we can't make them so fast, so quickly, and so efficiently that it's going to be cheaper than what we're getting them overnight. We can do it, but like anything, it takes time, right? To even build the factories takes years. I've seen buildings take a decade to build a factory that is going to make cars or refrigerators or whatever. It takes time. And by the time we get that up and running, the whole world's gone up against us and they're retaliating with their tariffs. So I wanted to point that out. Like tariffs alone by itself is not horrible, but it has to be done right. It has to be done in small doses. For example, let's say, you know what? Screw you, China. We're not going to buy our TVs from your Vizios or Sonys from China anymore. We're going to build them right here in America. Great. That sounds great, right? Yeah. Now we're going to build the plant itself, the factory, right? All right, let's start with that. That takes years. But the TV itself has hundreds of components from the plastic outside of it to the liquid screen to all the internal components. A lot of different factories and companies have to build those pieces for this TV, the circuit boards, the wiring. I mean, all of that can't be done by one company. It just doesn't work that way, right? Even an automobile doesn't work that way. Different companies make different parts, the lights, the bumpers, the cloth material, the leather. Different companies have to make those. So now we got to go find companies that make the TV components that we are not going to be making. You see where I'm going with this? It has such a time intensive component to this that cannot be ignored. It has to be considered seriously. And it has a ripple effect, right? If we are stopping our iPhones or making that more expensive, and Apple is investing in the country billions of dollars, I heard, to do more here in the States, it has a ripple effect with everything. We're talking from plastics to chips to uh, anything else that our glass or whatever else our iPhones make or uses. Where are we getting these parts from, right? Now we're going to have companies that make these parts so we can assemble them somewhere in the country and then, sell them here, hopefully for cheaper than what we're getting them, which, again, that's another conversation. Anywho, if you think about it, it can be done, but it takes time and in small doses. We should start with one segment, let's say the auto industry at first. Let's start with that and then slowly move on to other things. It can't be done overnight. I mean, that's just common sense, right? By the way, we used to make things. You mentioned this in the last segment about tariffs. I was a business major. I went to Florida Atlantic University down in South Florida. One of the things I remember from business school was how we used to build stuff here in America. America was known many decades ago for making things, making them here in the good old USA. And everything used to have a stamp made in the USA on it. A lot more products. The way we see China, that used to be us a while ago. Back in the 1940s and maybe even a little bit in the 50s, people that didn't go to war, that stayed in the U.S. and didn't go to the military, and usually mostly females, they were putting together war machines, parts and components for all the things we used in the war. You name it. They were making the guns. They were making the ships, the airplanes and the tanks and you name it. And then the parts that go with these ships and tanks and airplanes and jeeps, all that good stuff. We were pumping that stuff out like crazy with submarines. And we were helping our allies too. We were giving them these planes to fight the war, right? We were a war machine country building stuff, right? When the war stopped, what happens now? Those factories converted into making other stuff, like refrigerators, like washing machines, like toasters, like they literally converted those back to making stuff here in America. So we used to make stuff, and it was well known, many, many decades ago that America made stuff. A lot of things were made in the USA. Me story. Again, another story I heard in college. Other countries used to copy our stuff, right? Japan, of all people, used to copy our stuff when they started producing stuff and making things. The story goes how a Japanese businessman, was here in the U.S. and he saw this cool-looking bucket, and he says he's going to make these back in Japan. So he took a copy of this bucket, or he took this bucket. It was a metal bucket. He took back to Japan. And he created a mold for it to build this bucket. Turns out that bucket that he took had a little dent in it. And sure enough, they produced these buckets in Japan with a dent in it. They copied us just like that. So exactly, and everything we did, they just copied, not just Japan, but China. And they used to replicate our stuff, even with a dent in the dang bucket. Isn't that hilarious? I don't know if that story is true or not, but I heard it and I thought it was hilarious, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. They've been copying us because we used to make everything, even buckets. But guess what happened? We became prosperous. We became, we were making so much stuff that in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s, obviously people were making money, and we could afford cars and per household and TVs and whatnot. And people were going to college now. People were becoming more educated. People were getting their bachelor's, master's, and doctorates. So things kind of changed. You know, somebody with their bachelor doesn't want to sit at an assembly line and put together a toaster, right, or an oven. They're like, no, that's something that's why I went to college. So more and more people went to college, more and more people became educated. We became very prosperous. And we kind of shifted away from making those things and we went into the technology sector. We went into the service sector, right? We were selling insurance now. We were doing finance stuff. Uh, and we moved away from that. And that was willingly. I don't think that we were forced to do that. And guess what? Other countries picked this up who could do it for less, who were willing to put together a toaster, right? So they started doing this while we shifted away from that all willingly, and we were okay with buying our toasters from Japan and China and wherever else. That was something that we did, and our economy drove us to do that. That's not a bad thing, by the way. Not, don't get me wrong. We did still make things here. You know, there are autos and things that we made, but kind of shifted away from it. It's like, yeah, China, you can make our TVs cheaper. Fine. Well, you make them while we do other stuff. And we actually have been great at this quote unquote other stuff, right? We've been great. Microsoft, IBM, the whole world uses Microsoft, right? Windows everywhere. I've traveled the world, and when they open their computers, whether it's an Apple computer or anything else, they use American software. They use, you know, Bill Gates became a gazillionaire because of his software and everything else we did, you know, Adobe and, you know, Word docs and PDFs and, you know, images. And we became this great nation of technology. Ever heard of Google? Google literally has changed the way we live. A friend of mine from South Africa many years ago posted something on Facebook. And he said, if you don't believe me, Google it. People in Africa using Facebook are saying Google it. This is, you know, in the early 2000s, maybe in the late 90s. That's how much it's become a fabric of everybody's life. We've influenced the world with these American software and products and Instagram and you name it. Even GPS. GPS came, you know, 20, 30 years ago, not maybe longer, but that was invented in America. And that was our gift to the world, by the way. GPS was something that was invented here. The whole world used it. Um, there are things that we have done and we moved away from putting together stuff. You know, we don't want to sew our Levi jeans here in America. We'll let the Chinese do that or whomever. But it's not an American product, right? This software, Google, Apple, uh, you know, trying to think of other stuff that we do. All this, even Tesla, right? Mostly technology based, but uh, the satellites. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites up there, all sent by America, and we lease these satellites to other countries. And these are American companies that lease these satellites, right? HughesNet, Starlink, all these. We are a technology and service based country, and we've been rich. Nobody doubts how rich we are. We have been the leaders in the world when it comes to capitalism and the way we do things. We have the best doctors in the world, right? The service sectors, nurses. You know, other people come from around the world to see our doctors. They literally come from around the world to see specialists here and then they go back. Our nurses, with doctors and nurses comes doctors' offices, comes hospitals, urgent care. With that comes super duper equipment that can do stuff, the scanners. And this is, you know, things that we can do. The software is made here, you know, whether it's an MRI machine or whatever. But yeah, let Canada put it together, right? Our doctors and nurses know how to use that. And then our technology companies puts that stuff together, whether it's a heart monitor or whatever. That technology is usually out of the States. We are good at that kind of stuff. You know, our engineers are the best. People around the world come here to learn how to do stuff, build things, whether it's a structure or a technology-based thing, or a computer chips. how to put it together, how to make the software. People around the world use our stuff and we sell it to them. We're not giving it away for free either. But we charge people when they come here to see our doctors, we charge them an arm and a leg. People come here to study all over the world. Our colleges are the best, our university, you name it. We have the best teachers and the best service sector. We've been very prosperous doing that kind of stuff. Uh, our what I don't even know what doctors make per hour. They make or lawyers and engineers. I'm sure they make a couple hundred, maybe $500 an hour. Who knows? That's where our money is. And no person who's gone to college is going to go sit in an assembly line and put together a Nike shoe, right? Even though Nike is American, they're not going to do that. We'll let the Chinese put it together, but it's an American product. We know how to sell that stuff, right? Once it gets here. I also wanted to emphasize how the tariffs actually hurt us when a product comes from another country. It's to America, let's say. Let's say we import Adidas shoes. By the way, Adidas is a German shoe. Let's say Adidas imports stuff, shoes, clothes, whatever, into the States. It's an American business company or a business that's buying them from Germany. But when they get to the port, at the port in America, wherever that be, in New York, Miami, wherever, they can't pick it up without paying that tax, right? Now, that tariff, i.e. tax, has gone to whatever, 35%, let's say. We are paying that. The American businessman who goes to pick up his product has to pay that. And guess where that's going? That tax goes to the government, right? So it's the American people paying that tax. I think a lot of the listeners, you all listening right now, probably know what I just said is true. But most Americans don't understand that. They don't understand. They think, oh, we're putting taxes on China. China's going to pay that 35% tax. No, it's the American businessman who imports that from China or Mexico or Canada. So that's supposedly supposed to deter them from doing that. Don't buy Adidas, buy Nike here in America, which is maybe higher priced or whatever. So when you bring your uh, uh, Adidas or any other product for that matter, and you've got to pay your taxes to pick it up from the port of authorities, now you have to add that to your cost, right? When you put it on your store, you got to add that on top of your other stuff that overhead to make a profit, right? So now that shoe you used to sell for whatever price, $100, you got to add your 35% and add extra for your profit. Before you know it, that's a $200 shoe when you used to sell it for $110, right? So that's how it works. Again, I don't think the average American understands how that works. I certainly know some people that I know that don't know that that's how it works unless, you dive in. All we hear on the news is, oh, tariffs is going to put taxes on things. And nobody really thinks about who's paying those taxes. It's the buyer here. Anyway, back to what I was saying. We have been a prosperous, rich country. Nobody around the world has disputed that America and the Americans are a prosperous nation. We are the richest country. At least we have been up until now. And we still are. I think we still are. But things could change, quote unquote. We have been great with the way we've been doing things. Can things be better? Sure. But again, in small doses. We are great at making things work. We don't make them, we make them work. Did you know currently in the United States, I saw this on 60 Minutes not too long ago, we, or scientists, have figured out a way to make a small version of the sun. Can you believe it? A small version of the sun? That's crazy. I think they called it fusion. It's a nuclear fusion. It's an inertial, I guess, confined fusion. ICF. I remember it was an ICF, inertial confined fusion. Look it up. Google it. LOL. But by the way, this process takes less energy than it produces. So there's nothing ever been like this in the world, right? It's kind of like the sun. It feels like it never ends, right? So it's a bunch of lasers that focus on one little pinpoint, which is the size of an atom, I believe. And once these lasers hit each other at that precise spot, it produces a small version of the sun, which can produce energy to run a country for years. I mean, that's just like mind boggling, right? Who can do that? This is what we are good at. This is what we do. And we will not go and sit at an assembly line and put together a refrigerator, right? Part by part. We don't do that. And that's what I'm trying to say is we can do things and be prosperous. Back to what I said. Is tariffs bad? Make us make more stuff here, build stuff here. Sure. I think it's not bad, absolutely, but in small doses. We have to do it slowly, methodically, and have a great plan in place to make it happen. If Joe Schmo wants to go now make these Adidas shoes or Nike shoes here in the United States, he has to have some kind of a plan in place to do that. It doesn't happen overnight, and you can't do that across the board with everything, from our cars to whatever our light bulbs that we want to make more of here. It has to be done carefully, slowly, and with a lot of help from the government. I think it can be done, and over time and slowly. It has to be like a plan where we start putting tariffs slowly on a particular product or industry as we incentivize people here to make them more and give them plans and show them how to do it. And as we get that going, we increase the tariffs on that product or industry, and the two will crisscross at some point where the tariffs are nice and high against whoever's, tariffing against. And by then, we've already made that product here. We can do that. So with that timing and planning, I think it's doable, but not the way it's going on right now. Things are not going to work when you throw it so hard, so fast, and try to block everything and say, all right, Americans, go make it now. It doesn't work that way. I mean, that's just common sense, right? We have to just keep doing what we're good at and start to work on making things slowly. So keep YouTubing, right? We all are great at YouTubing and TikToking. And, I've heard how TikTokers are making Instagrammers and influencers are making hand over fist, right? That's what we're good at. Keep doing those things. I think as Americans, that's what we're good at. The whole world watches us. Keep making those movies. We have blockbuster movies. I don't think anybody in the world can rival us with our movies. I've watched foreign movies and they suck, right? You have to admit they suck. Even for our British friends out there, I haven't seen any great British movies either. And even if there were any, it's the Americans who are actually producing that stuff. Keep making those blockbuster movies. How about our Taylor Swifts? I mean, apparently, she changes economies, right? Our musicians, country artists, you name it. That's what we're good at. There's so much more I'm sure I'm forgetting that we do that. We are the best in the world, and that's what makes us prosperous and rich. Let's avoid being, I don't want to say it, well, I guess I have to now. This is how communism works. They made people do certain things by how the government wanted to do. Socialism, that's how it works. They force people to do certain things. And how did that work out for them, right? How did that work out for Russia or some socialist countries? They can't advance. They have super high taxes up in Europe too. But by the way, what we were doing just now with this whole tariff thing and everybody's retaliating, I saw how Japan, the Prime Minister of Japan, South Korea, and China got together and they're banding together. They're saying, well, let's do more trade amongst ourselves. Screw the U.S. Europe's doing the same thing. Europe's getting together. They're banding together, saying, you know what? We'll all agree to put more tariffs on, reciprocate tariffs on the U.S. And then I wouldn't be surprised if Canada and Mexico do that, and some South American countries maybe. But the whole world is banding together against that. Don't get me wrong. Didn't we say we wanted to bring the world together? We wanted to unite the world, but not like this. they're ousting us. They're shunning us. They're all uniting, but leaving us out. That's not how we wanted to unite the world by leaving us out. We're not invited to the party now. So they're just reciprocating, and that's not what we want. That's not how we wanted to unite the world. I think, again, as my experience in college and everything I've seen in life, the most prosperous countries are the ones that let competition thrive. Let competition take its place. The people will figure out how to make things better and cheaper. People will figure out what to make and not to make. People will figure out how to go into the guitar business or the music industry or the arts and everything else that we are so good at. And the whole world wants our stuff. They want our arts and music and talents and actors and, you name it. We are good at those things. So let competition do its thing. It's been working for us for at least a century, right? It's been working. And yes, we can nudge things here and there with a little tariffs here and there, but in moderation, with a lot of planning and a whole lot of patience. Set your expectations. These things don't happen overnight. I think the whole country needs to remember that and realize that we can't make it happen in 1 week. The stock market will tell you that it can't be done. And anyway, that was a joke. It's not just the stock market. I do have a segment about the economy. There's so much that goes into the darn economy. That's another hour's topic. However, just wanted to remind everybody to be thinking about this and stop the nonsense. It doesn't work that way. Stop the nonsense. LOL. So keep YouTubing, TikToking, Instagramming, Facebooking, and stream those movies. That's what we do best, right? Do what you're doing. Everybody I know is in the service industry. I don't know anybody who makes anything. So do what you're doing because apparently we've been doing a great job as Americans. So keep doing all that. And remember, when you see something that's nonsense, be thinking, stop the nonsense. Thanks for listening. I'm Jim Mallory. Take care.